All right, this is our 10th and final episode of Season 4 of Angel, the podcast. Thanks again to our incredible guests and our sponsors, LinkedIn. We couldn't do it without you. Shout out Blake Barnes for being on the pod. Assure, thank you so much for helping us with our fund management here at launch. Zeus Living and NetSuite, great job supporting the pod. An amazing effort by our internal team, Nick, Matt, Maureen, and Charles. And of course, thank you to you, the listeners. And what a lineup it was. Sarah from Index, Dan from Cotu, George from CRV, Sarah from Benchmark, Ajay from Bain, Nicole from Lightspeed, David from Bessemer, Sarah from Greylock, Jeff from GGV, and today, Shawn Carolan from Menlo Ventures, investor in Siri, Jump Bikes, Roku, and of course, Uber. So a great season, and we'll look forward to seeing you all for Season 5. Enjoy this episode.
Season 4 of Angel is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. You already know LinkedIn as the world's largest professional network. It's also a better way to find great talent. Go to linkedin.com/angel and get a $50 credit towards your first job post. Assure is the leading provider of special purpose vehicles and fund administration with over 5,000 completed transactions and $2.5 billion under administration. Angel listeners can get 20% off their first SPV at assure.co/angel. And NetSuite by Oracle, the business management software that handles every aspect of your business in an easy-to-use cloud platform. Schedule a free product tour and receive your free guide, Managing Business Uncertainty, at netsuite.com/angel.
Hey everybody, welcome to Angel the Podcast. Today I'm taping this on Thursday. Today is Thursday, April 2nd. It's all melding. We're in we're closing in on 30 days in the official shelter at home here in San Francisco. Thoughts and prayers out to anybody impacted by the disease, which seems to be everybody at this point. Everybody knows somebody who has contracted the coronavirus. So thoughts and prayers to everybody. And just a big thank you to everybody on the front line. That includes the Amazon, Instacart, Postmates, Uber Eats, Grubhub, all of y'all keeping people fed while they stay at home. Your heroes, to the janitors, the nurses, the doctors, all out there getting it done. And even the public transportation system, which I guess there's a debate if that should be running or not, but it does seem some people need to take the transportation system in order to get food for their families and to go see health professionals. So shout out as well to the bus drivers and to the mass transit, even Uber drivers and Lyft drivers out there getting it done. It's tough for everybody, but we will get through this. And we will carry on producing the podcast because you're home. And my advice to all founders is don't give up. Don't give up. The economy needs you. Now, to talk about the economy after the big disclaimer I just gave about people dying, sometimes might seem callous or maybe I'm focused on the wrong thing. Well, in a crisis, you have to focus on what you can do. You all listening to this podcast this week in startup are likely not doctors. You're likely not nurses, janitors, Uber drivers, Postmates drivers. There's very little you can do except stay at home. Now, what are you going to do when you stay at home? Yeah, spend time with your family. That's great. But creating jobs and making a vibrant economy so people can have a vibrant livelihood. Job one, keep people alive. Job two, we got to keep people's livelihood because that's how we pay for people's rent, their child's education, all that great stuff that people need. And so I encourage everybody who's an entrepreneur to survive. Survive equals success. Whether it's a one-person company when you come out of this or a 10-person company, down from a 100-person company, 50-person company, if you survive, you can rebuild. Do not give up. That is the message. So we're going to keep doing the podcast. We're going to keep talking about these issues so you can have a little motivation, maybe some tactics, and generally not feel as isolated as being kept at home will make you. And I got to tell you right now, I am not designed for social isolation. You all have been listening to this podcast for a decade, and I love to talk, and I'm losing my mind at home alone. And just even doing the podcast for me is really helpful for my own mental health. Today, Shawn Carolan is with us. He is with Menlo Ventures, and I met him maybe 12 years ago when I was pitching my startup. And although he didn't invest, and Sequoia did, and some other folks did, I always noted, Shawn, that you were absurdly generous with your time, advice, and you kept it super positive. Welcome, finally. and thanks for coming on the podcast. If my notes are correct, you have not done a podcast yet. How on earth, Shawn, did you dodge a podcast for the last 5 years? And welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Jason. You're very generous, and it's a little bit scary to think that was 12 years ago. But yeah, positivity is definitely one thing that I think is absolutely required, both for investors and startups to see a path through, because obviously the odds are stacked against you.
And how are you holding up through all of this? Is the family okay? Everybody okay? I just want to start with that, of course.
My family is healthy. I'm very grateful for that. And I think, like you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I go to the grocery store and just have such gratitude for the person who's checking me out and stocking the shelves, and the essential services that are still flowing. Have several healthcare workers in the family, doctors and nurses, and worried about them. Parents that are elderly. So it's a really hard time for everyone. But I appreciate your thoughts that, you got to do the best you can, both at continuing what you were doing beforehand, and then extend, I think, some helping hands to whoever you can help in the way that you can, and gratitude and with entrepreneurship, in addition to what you said, just, surviving is really trying to make good decisions, because we are in an environment where there's not incredibly good data, a lot of uncertainty about, when things end, how things end. So just, being very thoughtful and relying on people around you, measuring twice, cutting once. I mean, we've all worked very hard to build great teams, and you don't want to prematurely cut people if you don't have to. That said, you don't want to spend money that you don't have, and the capital markets are contracting somewhat. So just being very thoughtful in the decision making, and very thoughtful in the way you talk to people about what's happening, and what you know and what you don't know. Like, I think a CEO is kind of a lonely job sometimes, but this is really not a time to be lonely, pounding your chest. It's a time to open up and make everybody part of the struggle that we're all going through together.
And there's two things I'll pick up on there. We don't know three things. One, we don't know when the capital markets are going to reopen. This is an open question, but we do have some precedent there, because we've seen markets open and close before. And you and I have lived through that. We lived through the 2008 crises, the Great Recession, financial crisis. And I'm not sure if you were an investor during you started right after, I think, 9/11 and the dot-com crisis. So
That's right.
You kind of started at the perfect time as an investor. So looking at those three seismic events, what can we learn from those about when normal or almost normal happens?
Each, especially an event like this, those are all black swans that come from different origins and different mechanics in the way they manifest in the economy and in our mindsets, right? You think of basically all of the things that we do are just driven by human decision making. And so I think what's really interesting about this one is, there's the first order effects of just people getting sick. And let's say, if you get this, you survive, you're out for 2 weeks. I mean, that's a 2 out of 50, 4% productivity drain for that person, but their families around them, right? There's the mindset of just, I'm scared, I'm anxious, I'm not sleeping. There's the healthcare systems. I think the most impact that we're all seeing right now is the second order effect of this is really a humanitarian crisis, where, the hospitals are being overwhelmed. Obviously, you don't want people to go in and not be able to get the equipment that they need. And we all obviously have family members that are probably in a high risk age demographic and stuff. So I think it's pretty amazing to see the way the whole country has come together and said, like, even if I don't feel like I'm directly at risk, I'm going to participate in this until we have a better read on what's happening. And even the data, like, we just don't know the denominator for a lot of these ratios on, death rates, infection rates, et cetera. We don't know how many people have gotten it and were asymptomatic, or have gotten it and recovered quickly because the testing hasn't been there. So That's, I think, the hardest part is when you look at the ripples throughout the economy and certainly the mindsets, like this little piece of protein is with us, forever. So you say, what's going to change the trajectory? And it's, of course, looking at the data, seeing when the curve starts to come down is like, okay, at least, the dramatic social distancing measures we took, we're able to mitigate that. But, until you have effective treatments, until you have a vaccine, you're certainly not going back to normal. So then it's a very, I think, slow protocol of increasing some of these things. But when's the next time we're going to be able to go to a sporting event with 10,000 people in a stadium and feel safe? Like, I don't know. That could be, well over a year. So that's the hardest part to predict. And I don't think it is particularly helpful to look past at some of the other ones because they were just super different.
Yeah. And that is the challenge in this. And if you're an entrepreneur or an investor, you're really thinking about systems. You're thinking about the second and third order effect. You're thinking from first principles, and you're trying to unpack something that has so many unknowns and so much bad data.
Yep.
And people are trying to look at the Spanish flu data and apply it now. And I just saw somebody on Twitter was like, yeah, I'm not sure about the validity of data from 1918 or whatever it was. And I was like, yeah, that's a fair point. We really don't know. And it's scary not to know. So when you don't know, what you do know is how much runway you have. And when you're going to be cash out, and you can look at people's usage of your product and your revenue and have an idea of what it's going to take to survive. So that leads me to the second point that you brought up there, which is measure twice, cut once. You've been on the phone, I am certain, like all of us, talking to CEOs, talking to founders about making cuts, about surviving this. What are you seeing out there? What are the nature of the conversations? What are people doing to survive until that rebound eventually comes, which could be, some people believe 3 to 6 months, other people believe 6 to 12, and there are people who believe this is a 2-year story.
Yeah. Well, I'll say one thing is that 100% of the companies are doing something. So no one is unaffected. And I think how it is affecting each company is very much on a case-by-case basis. So you say, like, what's the net effect is, look, in recessionary environments, which where like business is down, and no matter, however stable your business, I think of a company like, Chime, which is just core banking for, everybody. And it's, very horizontal public service. Everybody needs a checking account. And they will be affected, right? Everybody who has an account is spending less money on travel, entertainment, all of those categories. So spend will be going down, and then some percentage of the population is losing their jobs, right? The jobless numbers came out and are just, really scary. So those effects multiply, and depending on the business that you're in, they will affect you in different ways. Some companies, ShipBob is another one that's in the e-commerce fulfillment space I'm on the board of. They have seen business, be up a little bit so far, but obviously are very carefully watching things. And then others, transportation sector, obviously we're both, investors in Uber, that's obviously been affected dramatically because people are getting around a lot less. So I think just being very thoughtful about, hey, given the job that I have, like you mentioned earlier, this is the role my company serves in the economy right now. What's the likely impact? And really taking, I think, of a new baseline, because so many of these companies' decisions are based on data. You're looking at, okay, I spend X on advertising. How many companies hit my website, how many customers hit my website? How many convert to a sub? How much value does each sub generate for me in terms of contribution margin, lifetime value? Those are the metrics that you use to make decisions in the business. And the world changed. So you now have to re-baseline, I think, all of those numbers. And so generally speaking, we are advising our companies, not to panic, but to plan very thoughtfully, right? Like if you had an aggressive hiring plan, slow the hiring plan way down. If you still think, hey, we are in a business that's going to either stay stable or benefit from this, like slow hiring way down and just start measuring and make sure, if you were spending a lot on customer acquisition, slow that way down, rebaseline. And then as you see, hey, these assumptions are still intact, then grow it back.
Got it.
And then some that where you're going to really get hit. Unfortunately, you do all that you can, I think, tactically to be thoughtful, right? Some companies are furloughing, saying, hey, everybody, go home for a couple months and collect unemployment. Some companies are reducing salaries and trying to take either blanket cuts across the teams or selective cuts where people who can absorb it, take greater cuts. And then, of course, the last case is you just need to trim the headcount. And I think of it as being more like right-sized for the new reality, right? Like it's probably not going to zero, but, to outlast the storm.
All right, when we get back from this quick break, I want to talk a little bit more about the dry powder. So much money was raised by venture capital firms, and that is different than in some other downturns we've had, and the role that dry powder will play in the recovery when we get back on Angel. Season 4, Episode 10. We made it to the end of the season. Stick with us. Hey, everybody. Instead of me reading you copy in an ad about LinkedIn Talent Solutions, I thought, what would be a great idea? Who made LinkedIn Talent Solutions? Who's the product manager? Give me the head of product, and let's talk about why this product is so awesome. We've had so many great hires with me today. Blake Barnes, the head of product for LinkedIn Talent Solutions. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. Big fan.
All right. Thanks for that.
Hiring is a tough journey, right? I mean, what we talked about how what you want to be doing is growing your business, and you want to find your qualified candidates quickly. And so we're just always looking for ways to get you more information, get you more insights to help you to do that. Screening questions are one of them. We also build our platform in a way that you pay for performance, right? So you don't pay one lump sum for when you're posting a job. You pay for the candidates that you receive.
Right.
And then we build all sorts of smart things in the process to make it faster and easier. So, we talked about how candidates might not be the right fit. You sounds like you've experienced a fair share of that.
I think everybody's experienced that, where you're like, you come into the meeting and it's like, oh, wait a second. Is this a fit? And the person's like, no, it's not a fit. It's like, what do we do now?
So you want to be
talk
able to
for 20 minutes and gracefully end the meeting.
You want to be able to filter the people that aren't a right fit out earlier, and you want to be able to let them know that it wasn't the right fit. It's only fair to let them hear back.
Right.
And so we've built tools using these screening questions, using automated systems that help you to automatically tell candidates that they're not the right fit for the role. Find
the right person for your business today with LinkedIn Jobs. You can pay what you want, and you get the first 50 for free from my man Blake. Just visit linkedin.com/angel, ANGEL. Again, linkedin.com/angel, and you get 50 right now. Terms and conditions apply because they're giving you 50. Thanks again, Blake, for coming on the pod, and thanks for this big stack of 50s here for me to give out to all the Twist fans. And the
Happy
Angel
to
fans.
be here, and of course, anytime.
Welcome back to Angel the Podcast. It's Season 4's final episode, Episode 10. Shawn Carolan is with us from Menlo Ventures. He's been doing this for about 18 years. He knows what he's talking about. And probably a little underground. You don't do a lot of this podcasting and pontificating. You kind of seem to me to be the guy who just puts his head down, does the meetings, and does the work. Yeah?
A bit. I have aspirations to be as talented as you on air, but I haven't gotten there yet.
I think it's better. I just had this brief discussion on Twitter, and they were like, God, this flood of advice from people who are first-time venture capitalists. I was like, yeah, my advice is probably the world, if you've been investing for under 5 or 10 years and you don't have any unicorns, probably the world doesn't need your advice right now. Probably just do meetings and go to board meetings and be of service for 5 years, maybe minimum, maybe 10. And people were like, didn't you start a podcast? I was like, I came from journalism. It's a slightly different path, but I really didn't start talking about hey, here's what I think about how you should invest until maybe year 7, 8, or 9. One thing that's pretty interesting to me, and I'm trying to get a handle on, is we have such large venture capital firms and so many venture capital firms out there. And I was talking to a very prominent LP, a limited partner who puts money in firms like yours and mine and others. And they said, yeah, if you raise your fund and you finished last year, great, because there will be no new managers and very little checks being written or commitments being done to new funds. And we've had so many new funds. It's got to be mind-blowing to you being one of 20 stops on Sand Hill Road to being one of 200 or 300 Series A stops. I'm curious what you think will be the shakeout in the venture space and how your job has changed. There's two questions there. What is the shakeout, or how will venture capital be going forward in terms of all these new funds? And I'm also curious, how did your life change over the last decade when you were, again, one of 20 people at 3,000 or 2,800 Sand Hill Road to now one of 300 people fighting for that Series A? And you're a Series A investor, and it used to be a short list. You go to Kleiner, you go to Sequoia, you go to Benchmark, you go to Excel. It was just like a short list. You go to Menlo. Now it's just a giant list of people who might do your Series A. So how did your life change? And then what do you think of all this dry powder?
Good question. So let's see, on the shakeout side first. One thing that's unique about investing in the venture capital market versus companies, it's a much longer lag time between, what are you doing as a business, right? Venture capital firms are in many cases just small businesses like a startup might be, 20, 30 people, maybe like even smaller, right? So if you're a startup and you're just executing poorly, then you're out of business pretty quick. Usually you have a year and a half of runway. And if you're just making bad decisions, hiring bad people, not making your customers happy, then shows up in your metrics, and then nobody wants to fund you, and you close up shop. And through the nature of venture firms, usually an LP commitment as you know, is like a 10-year commitment, right? So you raise a fund and you have kind of a long time to either be doing, bad work or not. And then the numbers, even the companies you're picking, do you advise them well? Did you pick good entrepreneurs? Are you recruiting well for them? Like all of the blocking and tackling that goes into good execution to build a great company and serve customers well. Like there's just a lot of stuff that happens, and it takes a long time for that to turn into value. So I do feel like, like in the bubble, it'll be a slow decline in some of these firms that you just see won't be raising their next fund and it'll go on to do other things. But I do think that's partly why, when you see some of these institutions or, people who've been in the business for a long time that are, have been through these things and are continuing to do what works. I think as you're in the industry for a long time, you see there's a lot of stuff like written about, and then there's these first principles fundamentals, and you come back to like, hey, good unit economics of a business are really important, right? Having scalable growth engines so that you grow is important. Getting really clear on what your customer need is. Here's exactly the need that I serve and how I serve it. And you're really, first line of talking to customers, understanding how the market's changing and making happy customers. So, in some ways, business is very simple. And I think as an investor to continue to coach the companies on that, like that will show up over time in the results of the firm. And so I certainly think the capital markets are going to be contracting. There's going to be fewer firms. There's going to be a lot less probably angel activity. I think individuals are affected often, more than the bigger pools of capital that are institutional. And even the people who have the capital are going to slow the pace. So I think, there will be a shakeout, but at least for the firms themselves, it'll be delayed. So that was first part. And then part two was on just, how the industry has gone so competitive.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I mean, I think of the level of competition varies with the stage of the company very much.
Yes.
And, one thing that has come from all of these incredible metrics toolkits, the Optimizely's, the mixed panels, the heap analytics, et cetera, is like, it becomes pretty clear that, hey, this business is working or not. You look at cohort retention graphs, you look at contribution margins, you look at LTVs, CACs, et cetera, and you'd be like, hey, this is a fantastic business, or man, this thing is just not working. And so what that means is, if you've been limping along for a while, you have a business, you have a product, and the metrics are bad, there's no competition. So I think that's an opportunity for good investors. And then if you have all the metrics are working well, the competition is extreme, right? Then you get in 5-10 term sheets, prices are getting bid up. So it's almost like a barbell in terms of demand for companies where
So,
that's where I think what we try to do in these environments is keep our head down and say, like, what are the next areas that are not, all of the boxes aren't checked yet. And then let's focus our time there. And frankly, that's where you can actually add value as an investor instead of just being another, check piling on and taking a ride with them.
So a company that has all the boxes checked, like a Yammer did at the time, or say a Slack did, just a bunch of SaaS companies where the lifetime value, the LTV you mentioned, is strong. The unit economics are strong. And you're saying, hey, and the CAC, customer acquisition cost, is strong. All those things are dialed in. You're going to have too many people trying to go for that deal. It's going to get bid up. And then you're getting it at a higher price. So your returns are going to be muted on the back end when you sell. But if you find somebody who's got, I don't know, if there's 5 of those metrics that are important, 3 of them are dialed in, 2, 3 are dialed in, 2, 3 left to dial in, you're saying that's where you can actually be of service. That's where you can do some damage because you're getting it at a fair price, maybe even below market. And you might have some upside there. So you're actually looking for imperfection in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I would go so far as with all things, complex systems, there's no universals. And so, look, you can still pay a high price in a round where the company has all the boxes checked and still produce great returns, right? I think you were very early in Uber as an angel. We led the B round, which felt like a high price at the time.
That's 300 million, right?
Yeah, for being in 4 cities with a black car service, right?
Yeah, people thought you were very dumb for doing that investment.
That was,
there were people laughed
said a
at,
few times.
It was literally people laughed. Like Uber went from, was a Series A like 40 or 50?
I think it was 50 with 10 from benchmark. Yeah.
So maybe 60 post. I'm not sure, but it went 5x, and I think the time between those two moments was 6 months or 9 months. I mean, it was a very quick A to B moment.
Yeah, we were November 11.
Take me to that decision-making process in November of 11 of this is a very high price, but we're going to pay it. And we're okay looking, let's face it, stupid in some people's minds for overpaying for a cab company in 4 markets. What was the discussion around the table?
It was not a straightforward one. I mean, there were times where we thought, oh my God, this price is just too high. We can't do it. And I'd say a couple things got us there. One was, especially I find this with consumer products, and that's where I focus most of my time. And I think of the area that I cover as utilitarian consumer is, what are the jobs to be done in a consumer's life? And then how does a piece of technology come into their life and service that job in a better, faster, cheaper way? And so, when you're evaluating a company like that, there's no substitute for living the product. And I was on the second floor of a flat in San Francisco and had pushed the button. By the time I walked down to the street, there was a car there waiting, get in, no tip. It was just this incredibly magical experience. And that was, for me, what sort of flipped it, where I went from, oh, this is too pricey, to just, that was consumer perfection. For this particular use case, which is I am at point A, I need to get to point B. It's a use case that everybody has all the time. That experience basically could not have gotten better. And then we modeled it as, okay, let's just say they get 25% of the taxi market. What size of a business is that? Felt like they could. And of course, it way outperformed that model. I think they're 10x the size of the taxi markets at some, and UberX came after that, and Uber Eats came after that, and the micromobility jump bikes came after that. So, but it was, I think, a combination of just incredible experience, doing some amount of modeling that says, okay, because it's such a great experience, let's look at the existing market and see what percentage of the market they could seize. And then the third was an internal benchmarking process that we've had in place for decade plus, of just looking again at, we talked about these fundamental metrics. And, after you evaluate thousands of companies a year across the team, you see clusters of patterns, and Uber was truly off the charts. One of the 2x2s is LTV over CPA. So lifetime value. What is, the contribution margin of the consumer's relationship with the business over time. And then CPA being, how much did it cost you to acquire that customer? So at that time, it was growing virally. People were just talking about it. You get to the place, oh my God, Uber was amazing. You'd given rides to each other. There was this, give one, get one, get a ride, give a ride free, take a ride free for your friends. So it was growing virally. And then the revenue per customer it just immediately replaced all of your taxi spend. It wasn't yet, I think, replacing.
So we're talking about hundreds of dollars a month, and the cost was tens of dollars to acquire somebody. So you start looking at that 2x2 matrix. This is the XY with 4 quadrants. That's and you're like, this is thousands of dollars in spend per year. So you want the revenue to be high, and then the cost to be low.
Yeah, so the cost to service that revenue, I mean, a whole other story about customer acquisition, how much you spend on that. I won't get into the nuances of the business model yet. But you say, okay, I'm a software company, right? You think of the Uber was really driver app, rider app, and they had to, insurance and call centers and some costs. But relatively speaking, when you collect, let's just call it, 20% of the overall ticket price for that service, I mean, that's a very good business model, right? And so that's the contribution margin. The CAC was essentially viral growth at that point. And so, free customer acquisition. And then the growth rate, you could look at month over month and it was, 20, 30% growth per month, which was still a, pretty high end service as black cars, right? And
it was bonkers.
Travis at the time had a bigger vision for transportation as easy as running water and all that stuff. So
yeah,
it was one of those where you said like, look, I don't know exactly how this is going to turn out, but this is a super unique property, really impressive, like the way they ran the data. And as we all know, Travis is a force of nature. So, this is an entrepreneur who's going to just work really hard against these taxi lobbies. So
when we get back, I want you to give me some thoughts on the founder archetypes. You just tipped us off on one, the force of nature. I want you to think about some of those other founder archetypes and maybe talk about some of the other big hits in your portfolio, including Siri, the voice assistant that Apple bought. Most people think it was built in-house. It was not. When we get back on Angel Podcast, Season 4, Episode 10. If you're an accredited investor, you need to understand what a special purpose vehicle is. You might hear me say it all the time. An SPV. We're doing an SPV. We're popping up an SPV for this investment we're doing. What is that? It's a special purpose vehicle that allows you to have up to 250 accredited investors in one group on one line item in a cap table, invest up to $10 million in a startup. So if you're an angel investor, you got a bunch of rich friends, you could start your own syndicate like thesyndicate.com, and you could power it with an SPV from our friends at Assure. Assure is the leading provider of special purpose vehicles and fund administration with over $2.5 billion in AUA, assets under administration, and over 5,000 completed transactions, of which we are hundreds. They have developed a very innovative platform called Glassboard to automate the entire investment experience from entity formation all the way through to an IPO. It's slick and it's beautiful. And Ashley, who manages our syndicate here, loves the interface. Not only do investors love it, but founders love it as well, because it keeps their cap table nice and clean and simple, easy peasy. They also manage the entire process over the life of the entire investment. So if you hold that investment for 5 or 10 years, the team at Assure, Assure, is gonna take care of it for you. To get 20% off your first special purpose vehicle, again, SPV, just visit assure.co/angel, assure.co/angel. That's assure.co/angel to get 20% off your first SPV. And thanks for supporting Season 4 of Angel. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. All right, Shawn Carolan did not invest in my business back in the day, but he was very kind to me. Do you remember that meeting? Do you remember meeting me?
I sure do. I think I had lunch with your whole team.
Yeah.
And you asked me, what do you like about my company?
Is that what I said?
in front of everybody. So It was an interesting kind of judo move where at that point I was, selling Menlo and selling your team on the vision.
That's
and
hilarious.
I thought there was a lot that was compelling about the vision. So I get excited about things.
it was a really interesting vision, I think, because I had seen Naver, the search engine in Korea, because my wife's Korean, and I started down, and I was like, search can be more than 10 blue links, and Google sucked at the time with all this web spam. And I said, you know what? Wikipedia's got the software. What if we put that software and made a search engine and we just had 20 links? The original name was going to be 20.com. Then it became Mahalo.com. And it really got to, people forget, I got to $10 million run rate within 18 months or 24 months just on Google. And then Google just pressed a button and just got rid of 80% of our traffic. And it really was a big lesson for me now as an investor. Like, man, if you've got a dependency on a single source of traffic and you start tall poppy syndrome, like they're going to cut you down, and they cut everybody down. Google just was like, you know what? How to, this thing, that thing, everybody's cut except for Wikipedia, which is not competing with us in any way.
That's right.
It was so
anybody with a search box, they were coming for you.
Well, they also put the search box. They also put the one box. So what they started to do was they started to pull the answer from your website and put it at the top under their ads. And I was like, oh my God, Google's the most cutthroat company. And they're so nice to you. Like they literally were giving us $10 million from one side in Google AdSense. And on the other side, Matt Cutts took away all the traffic. And I was like, we're partners. How could you do this? He's like, we're not partners. We don't have partners. I'm like, and I forwarded him an email that said like, partnership meeting. Can you come up and we'll buy you lunch? And we want to show our thanks as a partner. And he's like, well, that's a different part of the business. I was like, you're both Google at google.com. It was hilarious.
Big company.
But when we talk about the founder archetypes, you had me coming in there. I don't know what bucket I fall into, maniac. Especially at that time, I was pretty crazy. But Travis is a force of nature. You get the sense that you're never going to have to worry about some roadblock that Travis is not going to get through, knock over, go around, lift over his head, and body slam over his knee and crack in half. That's not why that business is going to have a problem. And you see it now with Cloud Kitchens. Nothing's going to stop that kid. You're not getting roadblocks out of his way. You're dealing with, if anything, the aftermath of him smashing through a wall and a bunch of bricks laying around, and somebody complaining that he broke their wall, like the taxi commissioner or something. Yep. What was it like having him as a founder in the portfolio and him just blowing through walls like that, and the regulation back at the time where the criticism, people forget this, was, oh my God, they're breaking the rules. People are going and picking people up in their own personal cars. And what was it like to have that kind of portfolio founder?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because like we were talking about before, if you're looking at a business as an investor and they don't have 10 term sheets, like there's something that's not perfect about it, right? And I think all companies and all humans have many things that are not perfect about them. And I think what you're trying to do is think of, okay, based on this problem at hand, does this founding team have the assets to execute on that? Some people call that founder market fit. But it really is important because different businesses require different unique skill sets in order to be great at them. Like if you took the Google founders and you said, hey, go run Pinterest, they do a terrible job, right? That was a very sort of design centric company. And so, I think when you see in that case, with Uber, like had to be extremely analytically driven because it's really easy to just send people to the wrong place. So they had just incredible GPS-based analytics to dispatch drivers to the right place. So, my first meeting at the company, there was he called it the math department. And it was, a bunch of PhDs, even though it was a super tiny company, I don't know, 10, 15 people at the time, if I remember right. There was a math department and it was a sign on the wall, and you go over and you see heat maps of San Francisco and where people are opening in the app. And they're like, okay, you need that because there is this taxi lobby. I remember, I think it was a Paul Graham tweet at the time, which is the harder you fight against Uber, the more corrupt your government is. Yep. Which I think is pretty clearly summed up. Like, look, if Uber is insuring the drivers and if Uber is doing, their best, at least better than taxis to, safety and scrutiny and all that stuff, screening, then it's just a more efficient model, right? Because of technology, you just have a driver, hey, once I'm on the clock, I'm busy, 80, 90% of the time. And that's, one of the kind of insights was, rather than like somebody sitting around 90% of the time and driving 90% of the time, it's just a fundamentally better, utilization, better economics. And so, to introduce a service like that where there is, lobbies and medallions and all these things, you did need a force of nature to grow, that quickly. And of course, there was also an Achilles heel to that, going, too far and not necessarily listening to concerns employees had and other things like that, which we don't have to go into now. But I think generally speaking, when that's the key part, is this, based on the job to be done for the company, what are the things that a founder has that are unique to that? And then of course, there's just general, founder principles that are goodness, right? So authentic motivation, which I thought you had, is this person really coming at this from a deep-seated place in their soul? Because, you're going to have to jump through barriers and punch through walls and whatever else. Yeah. And if you don't have that like intrinsic motivation, it's just like, this isn't working. I'm going to go on to something else.
You're going to give up. You're going to fold.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's key. I think the suited to the opportunity at hand, the execution, right? Like, there's people with good ideas, and if you're just not, like we talked about earlier, putting your head down and blocking through your list and getting stuff done and delegating and whatever else, like, just, no good idea is going to turn into anything without really good execution. So you have to be able to execute. I think, the capital markets are real and hiring employees are real. You have to be, some amount of storytelling and strategic long-term vision. How do you communicate what the future holds and get people excited about that? Is important. There's a dimension of like self-awareness and humility. Do you feel like, hey, I've got all the answers all the time? Or am I willing to subject my ideas, my plans to the scrutiny of a board and the scrutiny of my team and get the best information I can out of everyone around me? Customer empathy is also like, all great founders are really listening to, here's what people love about my product. Here's what they don't. I'm really going to focus on, making that better. And then probably the last one I'd say is focus. And this is where I probably made my biggest mistakes as a founder. I think you may have known at some point during the Menlo journey, I had an idea for a company called Handle, started that and tried to do too much. It was the idea was,
what was Handle?
It was, the mission statement was helping people spend their life on the important things. We came at it, at the time I was on the board of Siri. I said, what if Siri was in your email inbox? I, of course, was spending the majority of my week processing email. And you'd see these notes and you'd say like, oh, this is related to this project. This one's due that day. This one I want to hand off to this person and have them do it for me. And so there was this whole layer of metadata on top of the email inbox that you're unable to express with mark unread, flag, or put in a folder. So that was the original impetus was, man, if we could just get this metadata model on top of email, let you process it and then handle it, then it would be great. And I think I screwed up. I look back at that and, many lessons learned, but the biggest screw up was just to have laser focused on just that. If I just said like, stick with the email and instead I, email and then, hey, this is an important email. Well, that's a to-do list. And then I've got a to-do list. Well, when am I going to get my to-do list done? That's a calendar. And then there's this workflow and then there's, cross-platform and with a team of, 10 or 15 people, you really have to pick your battles. And so I think that's kind of the last one.
So you tried to build the Office suite before you had Microsoft Word done. Basically.
That's right. Or I had a crappy version of Word.
Yeah, let me get on spreadsheets before I have the the bold and the italics. Right. And it's really interesting. Email is such a big target, and I love big target. I like big markets, and you look at what Superhuman did. It's not. It's when I hear your pitch, it's kind of similar to the Superhuman pitch, which is, hey, we live in email. Can it be better than Gmail? Right? And it's a big, bold pitch. And in order to do it, I've been begging, it took me, it was very interesting with Superhuman because I was on the board in the early period and, or not officially, but maybe I was official. Anyway, I was going to board meetings in the original days and they didn't have an iPad version and all VCs use iPad Pros. And so you go to a board meeting, well, the VCs take out their iPad Pros. And he's like, yeah, it's Chrome only. And he's like, we have to nail Chrome. We got to get Chrome. That's the most universal. Yep. Everybody that people like, then he's like, here's the statistics of people using the product. I was like, all right, fuck this. I got to be a good board member. So I got a Chromebook. And I was like, if we're going to go be Chrome, I'm going to get the Chromebook from Google out of the drawer that they had sent me, and I'm going to just use that. And so I wanted to be number one on the leaderboard for usage amongst the board members. So I just was like, all right, iPad Pro, right in the garbage. Boom. I started doing the Chromebook and just started using there. And then, of course, the iPad Pro comes out. Everything comes out. And I've been riding him like, oh, where is my multi-user? I want to do multi-user. I want to have snippets. You know, like when you have those little snippets of like, thanks for pitching Menlo.
Feature request list for email is unlimited.
Yeah. But he's getting there. And, you know, it's whatever. I think we're in year 3 now. And boy, that talk about a Series B that was competitive. Woof. He had a massively won it. And Andreesen Horowitz, I don't even know if I can't speak to, it's not my company. I shouldn't say details, but Andreesen Horowitz got the deal. But boy, that was competitive. I'm sure you looked at it as well. What did you think looking at it, having had your own battle scars in email? Did you get a little deja vu all over again, as they say?
It did. It for sure. It was a little bit too close to home. I kind of laugh sometimes because, you know, we started Handle in kind of late 11, early 12, started hiring the team. And that was before Acompli, Mailbox, Superhuman,
Front.
Sunrise, Front. Yeah. So it was kind of sniffing in the right area, but just, you know, first time founder, first time product manager and made, you know, too many mistakes. But I'm very impressed with that team. Conrad Irwin, who I think is their CTO now, had done some contract work for Handle at the time. But I think this is where one of the key I talked about the focus, but you say, well, how do you focus? It's a pretty vague word. And one of the key frameworks I've come to use often with founders, especially early on in their journey, is this job to be done. And Clayton Christensen and some other people have written about it quite a bit, but I haven't seen it applied too much. And some of the big product companies, I know Instagram uses this, Dropbox uses it, but in terms of a tool for investing, I haven't seen it applied very much. And I really have been become a strong advocate internally at Menlo, but it has to do with the users, the situation, the motivation, and the context. And you get really laser clear on what is the moment in their life that you were intercepting. So that's kind of like the time dimension, or what is the dollar that they're spending that you're intercepting? That's the money dimension. Each of us as humans, we have 2 scarce resources, time and money. And I have a new product. And again, this is the utilitarian angle, not new fashion or new, you know, cool piece of video or whatever else. But if I'm a utility, then what is the minute or the dollar that I'm intercepting? And if you can get super clear on that, then it becomes very focusing, because then the user can just adopt you for that small part of their life. And then you have earned the right to grow in your scope. So you mentioned, you know, Gmail versus Superhuman. I think what they did is to say, hey, you know, when you are at your desktop, for a while, they didn't have mobile, and you need to process your inbox. That's kind of the situation. This is a faster way to, you know, plow through your inbox, but there's a whole bunch of features that has to come along with that. It has to be fast. You know, you need reply all, this, that, the other thing. Like there's so many things you have no idea that are part of an email client. Just parsing inbound emails, you know, Unicode and embedded images and
that's
attachments.
A year of coding, 2 years of coding.
I mean, it's like mind boggling how deep it is. So I think when, you know, I talk to early stage founders, I'm really, really, really hard on, look, you know, what's the rest of the world doing? What is your unique new value add in the world? And how can you do the absolutely smallest set of things in order to complete this one job well? And I think I can go back to basically every consumer success and point to what that story was. You know, Chime, I'm the best bank account. Jump, I'm the fastest way to get around a busy city. I'm talking about some you know, my hit lists, right? Like Roku, I'm sitting at a TV and I want to watch the world of internet video. And you know, those are the things that when you see a behavior pattern that's so broad, and then you come up with, here's just a better mousetrap for servicing that behavior pattern, then you have a really, I think, big...
All right, when we get back from this final break, I want to unpack those 2 big hits, Siri and Roku, when we get back on Angel, episode 10, season 4. There is enough uncertainty to go around right now. NetSuite will help you reduce all of that by giving you visibility and control into your business. You have a lot of critical decisions to make, and you're going to need the right numbers. You're going to need that instrument panel to really be able to fly the plane properly. And you need those numbers now. You're in the thick of it. Well, NetSuite by Oracle is the world's #1 cloud business system. With NetSuite, you get all of your financials, cash flow, payroll, inventory, and more, all in one place. So you have crystal clear visibility and total control of your business, and you can make the moves that you need to make in a crisis and in order to grow out of the crises. NetSuite customers have the flexibility to work from anywhere with immediate clarity on critical information right at their fingertips. There's no more guessing. There's no more waiting. You can make smarter decisions with confidence because you've got crystal clear visibility into all the numbers. Join over 20,000 companies who trust NetSuite to stay in control of their business. Here is your CTA, the old call to action. You're going to receive your free guide, Managing Business Uncertainty. And this is a new guide that you need to get. And you can schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/angel. That's right, netsuite.com/angel. Don't wait. Get your free guide and schedule your free product tour at netsuite.com/angel. Thank you so much, NetSuite, for supporting independent media like This Week in Startups and the Angel series. We could not do it without you. All right, come around the horn. Segment 4, Shawn Carolan is with us. He's Shawn VC with an H, and he is a managing partner at Menlo Ventures from 2002 to today. He rounds up an incredible class for season 4. Sarah Cannon of Index, Dan Rose from Co2, George Zachary from CRV, Sarah Tavel from Benchmark, Ajay from Bain, Nicole from Lightspeed, David from Bessemer, Sarah from Greylock, and Jeff from GGV. What a lineup. You know some of those folks, I'm sure, and work with them, Shawn.
Absolutely. Good people.
Good people. We had a good season. It's a great season. Thanks to our partners who brought it together. Really great to talk with these fine people. Take me through Siri and Roku. How did you meet them? And tell me about the tingle you got. Tell me about that Uber tingle you got. You know, you used the product and you got that tingle you talked about earlier.
Yeah, sure. Siri was an interesting one because, like I think so many things in technology, it's not a straight line. So we were looking at 3 different thesis areas. One was voice as a user interface, right? How do I type 80 words a minute. On a smartphone, I'm 40 words a minute. On a spoken word, I can talk 160 words a minute. So if I can interact with the computing device with my voice, that's good. So that was 1. 2 was this thing, you probably remember this, Jason, called Smarter Child.
What was that one? No.
It was a chatterbot that was on AOL Instant Messenger. You added it as a friend.
Oh, yes.
And you could say, what's my horoscope today? You know, should I dump my boyfriend? And it was basically like a magic 8 ball.
Yeah.
The responses were inane. Random. But I think at the time it was 17 million users and like 1 billion messages it was getting per month. So like that, you're a student of the market. So that's something. So there's this voice UI, which is kind of first principles based, this chatterbot, which was like observation of humanity. And then the third one was what I think of as sometimes being called Web 3.0, but these APIs going back and forth. And people may not remember, but Siri launched as an app. And the idea was, hey, this is a virtual assistant. And you could book tables or movies or find out the weather, like anything that you wanted to complete. Instead of going to Google, getting a search engine result page back, and then doing your thing, you just speak. Siri knew your identity, had your credentials, would log you in and do the thing. And so in many ways, the vision that Siri had still is not fully realized, but just those things coming together. And then I met this founding team, Doug Kittless, Adam Shire, and Tom Gruber, who had been working on a project inside of SRI called Kalo, the cognitive assistant that learns and organizes.
Explain what SRI is.
What's that?
Explain SRI for people who don't know.
SRI is a research lab in Menlo Park. They do a lot of work for the government. And there's this, I think it's the Bayh-Dole Act, if I remember right, where if you use government funds, DARPA in this case, to produce something for the government, but there's a use in consumer land, then you can move forward with that IP. And that's what they had done. So they had done all of this. This is where Nuance was born as well, was out of SRI. But they had done all of this IP around language parsing, which is incredibly complex. Just within 3 or 4 words, you have millions or billions of permutations for what it might actually mean. So they had done this work to parse language and understand, help knowledge workers in the armed services. So they were able to use that technology to launch Siri, and Doug and team had this vision for the virtual assistant. So when having looked at all of these different companies in each of those spaces, when I met Doug and Adam and the Kalo project and the demo they had, which at the time was called HAL, in honor of, the Space Odyssey instead of Siri. It was like, wow, these guys nail it. It's not obviously one of those ideas that you think. So it's like, when will this happen? Not if this happens. Of course, I'm going to talk to a computer. It's going to do things for me.
And that's a deep tech kind of problem, because it's not like there was an obvious, okay, yeah, my Lincoln Town Car is downstairs. I need a Lincoln Town Car to go to the airport, in the Uber case. Or, yeah, no, I was going to call the restaurant and tell them my order over the phone and wait on hold and tell them I want General Tso's chicken, and then it's going to come maybe and maybe not. And I got to call the restaurant 3 more times. It wasn't replacing anything in your life, right?
That's right.
That you could really pinpoint and say, okay, people are willing to pay $10 a month for this, right? And even today, it's still not, there's still no business model for it other than increasing utilization for very large companies that are making a decade-long bet on it, correct?
Well, I would argue as you bring down friction in consumer interactions, people will do it more often. Sure. Is probably the way I would think about it. And so look at, Amazon on the Alexa on my counter. And I use, both right now, Siri's, I think, in a billion hands. But, they, inside of Apple, which acquired them, a few years later, I think it was 2011, we invested in 2007, and it got built into the OS. They stripped off all the third-party services and didn't get back to that for a very long time. So I feel like, for sure, Siri team running independently would have done what Alexa has done and then some. But anyway, if the thing's on the counter and you can just say, oh, order some garbage bags or order this or that, because the friction has gone down and I'm not running back to my PC and typing this and typing that.
Theoretically, you should order more.
You should.
Yeah. But it's
the more, the better, faster, cheaper it can be, the better. And there, like, let's just say finding a service, there's a lot of work that goes into research. But imagine if I could just say, travel was one of the use cases they wanted to flesh out. If I could just say, geez, I need to go somewhere this weekend that's, open and within a 30-minute drive where it's very, sparsely populated and I can keep my social distancing. Like, the dream was something like that. You could have the machine parse all of this world of metadata, and then all of a sudden you may have yourself a great Airbnb room in the woods all alone. Whereas if I had to do all that internet research and 45 minutes later I hadn't found it, you just wouldn't transact. You'd stay in your house.
Yeah, but you had to make that investment with no discernible business model coming in 12 months or 24 months.
That's it. It was going to take a couple of years to get the tech right. For sure, if you think about it as you will transact through this platform, you will buy stuff, you will book tables.
Was that the original pitch in that Series A investment was, hey, eventually this will be like OpenTable or Expedia?
It would be, we will be a very important affiliate of them.
Got it.
If you look at like let's say a Honey or somebody who's in the transaction stream.
Got it.
And gets some credit for that. If you are the one who facilitates the commerce coming to that party, then, you get a piece of that action.
Got it. Take me through the Roku investment. I'm curious.
And then Roku, I think, too, is, all these things, they kind of look good at the end, but they always happen in fits and starts. So our very first investment, and it was my first board seat, was 2004, a company called Cinema Now, which was down in LA and a spinoff from Trimark Studios and had movie rights for internet distribution. But at the time, the technology would only let you get to the PC. So this was before Netflix was streaming. And it was, again, one of these things. It's not if, it's when. Movies will stream over the internet, like instant start, bigger selection, better recommendations. It was very clear what was going to happen. And Cinema Now just, basically never got to out of their way. They were relying on the Microsoft DRM platform, yada, yada. So I had been following Roku, and Anthony Wood, the founder, is a 6-time founder. Talk about founder market fit. He had invented the DVR at Replay TV. I had been going to these Cinema Now board meetings and saying, where is the $99 device that gets us to the big screen? Because you're watching a 2-hour movie, you want to sit back and have your popcorn or whatever else. That's
why we have a couch. That's why we got a big screen.
That's what a couch for. And the big screen, despite, the little screens, I still like watching a movie, with
I spent $4,000 on this big screen and $10,000 on this couch. Like, where's the $99 device that lets me stream to it? That's a really profound insight.
So it was May of 2008.
Yeah.
And I think it was just, a blog article, and it was, hey, Netflix player by Roku. So it was a $99 device. All it did was stream Netflix, but didn't have a hard drive. So the BOM was low. Netflix has set up their infrastructure all around streaming. Netflix had all of these customers. And it was one of these things, because you have a prepared mind, and that's what a lot of this thesis work does. It kind of gets you ready so that when you see it, this is the answer. And Anthony and the team he had assembled, his founding team, like, it just felt like, yes, like, this is it. And, he had a vision for, okay, after Netflix, we're going to open up this channel store. We weren't so far, and they are now, as to say, we're going to embed it as an OS inside of TVs, which is where most of their new devices are coming from now. But definitely the vision of becoming the platform for streaming video was there. And, this was a great place to get started. And now it's, $13 billion market cap company, publicly traded. They went public in 2017. So I was on the board for almost 10 years, with him. We were kind of a lonely investor for a number of years because it was a hardware company. It didn't look
hardware so
sexy,
brutal,
but always believed in the thesis.
Did Roku have a subscription service ever, or is it just passing through other subscription services?
That was part of the strategy, was let us be a vessel to you, great content provider, to come to the TV. And in that way, this sort of Switzerland strategy got a lot of different content parties to embrace them as a platform and get them to it. They do now have a free service called Roku TV, where they cut their own deals and then do ad support. But it's still, thousands and thousands of channels. Majority of the content hours is again, these partners.
It's almost free now. What does it cost for a Roku? Like, there's like $50 ones, $30 ones, $79.
There's sticks that could just go straight into the HDMI port, and I think those are $29.
That is amazing. Like, I was on vacation and we were going to be in LA for 2 weeks over the holiday, like 2 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, this is like just a dead TV here with like Cablevision or whatever. And I did, I guess Google had a same day service, or maybe it was Amazon. So I just did a same day service and got a Roku stick, plugged it in, authenticated everything. And I was like, oh my God, I like literally need to throw this in my bag now. And when I'm on the road,
you can travel with it.
Just travel with a Roku a stick and just go from there. What do you think of the number of startups being created? You see, like, I think Techstars now on a global basis doing over 400 investments a year, and Y Combinator's demo day has gotten so large they split it into 2 or 3 days. Maybe it was 3 days this last time, and a bunch of founders getting up for 2 minutes and screaming into a microphone that their TAM is going to be $50 trillion, and oh my God, we're the hottest thing since sliced bread. Do you even go to demo days anymore? And is that the way Series A investors interface, or do you just wait for the companies to bubble up because there's just way too many seed stage startups?
Very good question. There's just, I find it almost impossible to see everything these days. Obviously, we have a great team that's out there, including ourselves. And we do go to demo days, and obviously not in person, but virtually now, and see as much as we can. But inbound referrals are still super important, right? Here's a high quality signal coming in, and then thesis work, like what I was talking about with Siri, with Roku. I think of like a Jump Bikes, which was super early micro mobility company that ended up going back to Uber. Like, these come out of thesis work where you say, look, the ingredients are now there for a disruption to happen to this market. I call them ingredient technologies. But you think of, before GPS on the phone, before broadband data on the phone, before the App Store, before telephony API in the cloud, Uber was not possible.
Right.
You think of, Garrett whipping up this app and it being, the first app was terrible. I know when you invested, it was really ugly little
Ubertaxi.com.
Yeah. But,
but this isn't a taxi. This is a Lincoln Town Car. Why are we calling it Uber Taxi? Why don't we just call it Uber? Uber is like a simpler name.
So it's kind of like those pieces had to be there before the market could be disrupted. And so a lot of our thesis work stems on that. And we actually have this program called Menlo Labs where, hey, you kind of say, there's a problem here that's ready to be solved. The ingredients are now in place for something to happen here. And we just try and get smart. We don't necessarily feel like we need to create the company or, hire the founders or whatever else. If we find a company that, hey, there's one founder that needs another co-founder, or it's an early stage company, or even, we have an inflection fund, which does late stage investments. It's kind of off to the races. Like, we just want to, put the capital in the company that's going to win. But sometimes you see these problems when you're doing these thesis work and you form opinions on this is what it's going to take to win, all of the different fundamentals, like I talked about before, important problem, uniquely capable team, scalable growth engine, and compelling unit economics. Those 4 fundamentals come together in a way that you sort of unlock this problem at scale for the world. And that's how you create these enormous companies.
And when you looked at jump bikes, micromobility, you had talked earlier that unit economics were important. But in those businesses, it seemed like unit economics were bad. How did you make that decision to invest? And are, in fact, the unit economics in micromobility bad and not solvable now that we're looking at it, 5 years after these investments?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things, you're never investing for like today, right? I'm probably going to be in this investment 5 years, maybe 10 years. So you're investing for, okay, what are reasonable projections going forward for what will happen to the economics? And if I think of like at the time we invested in jump bikes, the bikes were $1,200, but you saw viral growth again because there are these red billboards running around the city. People are happy. They're moving faster. We did a race between a scooter, a jump bike, and an Uber to get across town as part of our diligence. And I smoked everybody on the jump bike, almost killed myself running through some red lights. But that, at the time it was like, okay, $1,200 of CapEx. But if the business model is working, capital is pretty cheap. You can get access to debt lines, et cetera. And people would ride, $2 to $5 per ride. And so if you get to density and these things, get a lot of rides, then you're kind of paying off the CapEx and you have to repair them and you have to move them around. So just did that whole equation get together. And I think what's happened is a lot of these companies in micromobility have scaled ahead of good unit economics, which is why they've had to burn through so much cash. But the demand is absolutely there. Like if you have a fleet first vehicle, and especially in the scooter market, this has not been the case. A lot of these companies scaled on what was a consumer grade vehicle. Then it gets stolen. Then it breaks.
Yeah.
Then
so you need to have one that's made for the purpose, which is 10 riders a day for 1,000 days.
You got it.
And easy repair, field repair. And this is why I think Bird looks pretty good to me because they came out with their own scooters, right? They have their own product now.
Yep.
But still challenging. These are just
it's still hard. And we have an investment company called Skip that built their own great scooter. Yeah. There's an ownership model where, hey, it's a personal asset. I want to use it for my own commute, right? And I don't want to find myself at the end of my train stop without a way to go. I take my Unagi scooter as another seed investment of ours, like take that to work and back. So when you see the demand being there, then it's like, okay, how do we execute well to not just burn through tons of cash before we can get the economics to make sense?
What are the silver linings coming out of the crisis we're in right now for founders? So assume you survive and we're sitting here in the fourth quarter. Everybody's back at restaurants, but with social distancing, maybe people are wearing masks to work. And the unemployment goes, up to 30% and then back down to, or goes to 30 million and back down to 5. And I think the unemployment number, I just want to touch on this because you mentioned it was quite staggering. I think it was 6 million claims last week or something like that. I don't know if I got that right. Nick, you can look it up. But there was 2 million on one day. What people don't realize about that number is that could ultimately mean that more companies will survive. So if companies are in fact furloughing people, laying them off or letting them go to rehire them so they can keep their company alive. So if you're a restaurant business, if you keep everybody employed and you pay them for the next 6 weeks, you're out of business. If you furlough everybody in week 2 and you have those 5 weeks of runway back, you can pay your rent, keep the lights on, pay for your equipment leases or maybe renegotiate those. And then in 6 weeks or 12 weeks, the government pays for that unemployment and you get to rehire those people. So the higher the unemployment number right now, the greater the chance in my mind that some of those businesses survive. So I'd be more concerned if the unemployment number wasn't high and people were running their companies off the cliff. Do you think my observation is in any way valid?
I do. To your point, like you say, what's the silver lining? I mean, in addition to just, I think, much greater empathy for humanity and appreciation for our healthcare system and how, the heroic work that they do. I do feel like getting back to basics and, here's exactly what I need to do to be successful. Here's exactly the team that I need, sharpening the pencil. There's the capital markets obviously are contracting, so there's going to be a lot less competition. So if you are one of the survivors, you will have built a business with good fundamentals. I think that's what happens. I see in a lot of these markets that are too crazy is companies just keep raising, big rounds and frankly, they get run in a very sloppy way. There's just tons of people doing tons of things that are really not on mission. And that's defocusing. That means you're not doing fewer things better. You're doing more things worse. And management bandwidth is always going to be limited, right? So I think, making sure just you're retrenching and, okay, here's what I do in the world and I'm going to do this really well. And I'm going to get, the best people that I could possibly find. And we're going to be a tight knit team and, get through this together. I think, will pay dividends over the long term.
I wonder, because people are saying, hey, so this is going to change life forever. Life will never be the same. And I heard that after the dot-com bust, 9/11 and the Great Recession. And then I was still going to Knicks and Warriors games. I was still going to restaurants and still getting sushi and still flying around the world. Nothing changed, except when I look back, maybe it was a little bit harder on the margins to get a mortgage, or maybe not. Maybe for like the top, that last 3% of people maybe who shouldn't have been buying homes, who were getting suckered into it. And then maybe my wait at the TSA was 20 minutes, and then I got clear in TSA, well, whatever the TSA version of clear is. What do they call that one? Global entry. I think. So we kind of reversed all of that, and then in over 10 years, and now you can go through fast again if you get some biometrics done. Yep. So looking back on it, nothing's changed. Like literally, mortgage crisis, 9/11, nothing fundamentally has changed. So is it possible we get through this and nothing fundamentally changes and people don't wash their hands and, don't wear masks and or maybe we do now stop for the love of God shaking hands?
The only way I could imagine it truly returning to 100% normalcy would be essentially 100% effective vaccine.
Yes. Which is 50-50.
That's right. And even, we think of, I get my flu shot every year and still sometimes, get a mild version of the flu. And so that's, say like, okay, what's going to actually change things from where it is today? It's not just more hospital beds. Obviously that's treating the symptom, but nobody wants to be, sick, coughing on ventilators, yada, yada, yada. So it's really like to go to the root cause. It's, here's this protein that exists in the world today, this little COVID thing. Coronavirus that creates COVID in humans, until we have either treatments that are approaching 100% effective, where if you get it, okay, just take this, right? Nobody feels like they're going to die of a bacterial infection anymore because you've got great antibiotics. So you're not too careful. Or, a vaccine, right? Like polio, measles, et cetera. We've got vaccines now we get, and we don't ever think about that. So I think that's, to me, until you have some combination of those two, super highly effective treatments or vaccine that inoculates.
So let's assume that happens, or let's assume we're able to, flatten the curve and mitigate it, so it's not like this. We all get to go back to work. What do you think the next couple of years will be like for founders?
The economic recovery timeframe is tricky, right? Because this is where, again, flattening the curve is we're just, we're socially distanced. And so it's going to play out a normal distribution of who already has it. But we don't want that. We don't want to keep life as it is. We want to get back to work. We want to socialize again. We want to go out to eat. We want to do so. That's the part where, because these treatments are going to take a long time, and you're not, until you go back to, you think of, I'm an NBA player and I used to fill a stadium with 10,000 people and there was concessions. They're like, until I can get back to that world, that business is going to suffer, right? So indefinitely, that 5,000 stadium event, concert, et cetera. Like there's a whole industry around having, thousands of people together, like CES, E3, right? Like all these, that business, until you have these cures or really effective treatments, just can't return to normal. So that's going to be years and years and years and years. And then you've got, other things that maybe can adapt, right? Uber Eats is going to be more of the Uber business instead of, so, other things like that. I just don't know. It's hard to forecast how all the things play out, but I don't know. I think
if there's more unemployment,
if you are directly affected, it's going to be a long time.
The more unemployment means it'll be easier to hire people, certainly. Salaries will probably be less extreme. Competition for talent will be different. Real estate and people paying for extreme, big companies buying big commercial real estate to put people packed in open floor plans, like that seems to me to be that's going to be a sea change. I think work from home now.
Yeah.
Like I refuse to do remote podcasts because I feel like I can't do what we're doing right now as well without having the person across from me. And I've had to adjust my game a little bit. Hopefully these interviews are as good in person. I'm not certain they are, but I'm not certain they're not. I mean, certainly this provides value, but if we were in the room together, I think I might get you to give me even more candid answers. I might get you to give it up even better, but it's really interesting to what will happen to office space and working from home. The idea that we have Google workers and Apple workers on buses for 75 minutes to go down to the peninsula from $4,000 apartments in San Francisco, I think that whole model collapses.
That I think will change dramatically for sure. Yeah, look, there is no substitute. I think when you think of there's communication, which is spoken or written, but in-person communication, all the nonverbals, eye contact. I mean, there's something about empathy, trust, all of these deep psychological things that are really hard to replicate digitally. I mean, there will be progress in that regard for sure. I think there's gonna be more attention to like this telepresence and other areas like that. How can it feel like you and I are face to face, even though when we're not physically together? Like there's no question that will be areas of future, startup opportunities because it becomes more and more important. But it's sad. I mean, that's the part that's probably, saddest to me is there's a lot of our humanity that derives from being together and, high-fiving and looking at people and really, listening closely and, some amounts of physical contact, appropriate, of course, and things like that just make you feel like, hey, I'm not alone. And I've certainly struggled with this a bit in this environment. Like I've got a lovely family, but imagine, if you're alone, trying to just deal with these ups and downs and you don't have anybody to just, sit across from and give a hug to and stuff. It's super hard and sad. And I obviously am hopeful that we can come up with these treatments.
I'm an optimist. I think this is what I think is going to happen. I think that if people wear masks and don't shake hands and social distance, we're going to be able to just have young people who are less impacted or people who don't have diabetes and are overweight. That seems to be something that's going to be a major contributing factor. Yeah. So people who are healthy, under 50, under 55, 60, whatever it is, with masks, not touching door handles, getting rid of door handles like they don't have them in Japan, getting rid of touching kiosks, all this kind of stuff, wearing masks to work. Yep. I think we go back to work in May in California, maybe a third of the population goes back to work, 2/3 stay home. And we see if the curve increases. Because, man, in California, the ICUs are empty. In the Bay Area, I don't know if you follow this doctor from UCSF who posts like every day how many COVID patients they have. And I didn't check today. Yep. But it's been 13 patients in UCSF and either 7 or 9 were in ICU. So it is bonkers how effective the Bay Area has been, which True. I have to attribute to the fact that you've got a very science-based group of people here who understand because they're very involved in business and viral coefficients. And I'm not saying this to be like silly, but if you understand virality and whatever this, R0, R0, like how things grow, we all understand, like we talked about Uber growing virally because somebody would take somebody in Uber and they'd say, how did you do that? And they'd show them over the shoulder virality. Like, here's the app, look, watch.
Yep, totally.
All of that, I think led to everybody here taking it seriously. And then people in other states who maybe heard on Fox News it was a hoax and were only 15 people with it on a cruise ship somewhere and it was going to zero, they just ignored it.
Yep.
And Florida
and
2 days ago,
a lot.
I mean, Florida 2 days ago did their statewide quarantine. This is in day, it's Thursday, I'm day 23 for me on quarantine. You're day 20 something, right?
Yep, same.
We are 20 days into our quarantine when Florida just enacted it. Think about that. And New York was 10 days behind us, and they have the biggest outbreaks. So the biggest outbreaks seem to be in cities where you ignored it for some period of time and you have density. So maybe Florida is a little more spread out and they don't have mass transit. Maybe that solves it. But I mean, what happens to mass transit?
I think it was 3 weeks ago now when Menlo went to work from home. And I think it was like LinkedIn, Microsoft, and some of Amazon were a week ahead of us. So if you say who are the first people that were announcing that and doing that, it was these big tech companies where I think you recognize, wow, I've got 10,000 employees, and
why risk it?
Even one would be horrible, and just like you said, kind of understanding of viral coefficients, and you didn't have to go too far to study what happened in Japan or Italy at the time if you were looking, but a lot of people just weren't looking because it's just such a shock to the system.
It's easy to be in denial, I think. I think it's much more comforting to say, listen, it's going to be a bad flu season. It's going to be like the flu. It might turn out with social distancing. I was having this discussion with people who really like to handicap things and predict. And there's like a book called Super Forecasting. If you haven't read it, it's pretty good. And they have all these good forecasters. And I think the forecast is, most people believe, who do this for a living, forecasting 50 to 200,000 dead in the United States because of the techniques we're doing. And we have 50,000 people die on average from the flu. So and we're only at 4,000 people dead in the U.S. now, or is it 5 here? So if we look at the deaths, and listen, one death is horrible. So, but you do have to think about the totality of this. The people with the best forecasting ability seem to think 2x flu season. In other words, another flu season on top of the flu season would be the low end of the estimate. Maybe 50% more people than flu season. So 25,000 people on top of 50 in an average. And then maybe we wind up with 5 times flu season. So it'd be like 6 flu seasons at once. You put all that together, it's horrible, but I'm an optimist. It feels survivable. And the problem with this was we thought it was an 8% death rate, 5.6% death rate. I had people who were friends of mine freaking the frig out, getting guns, going to the woods and saying, we're going to lose 100 million, 200 million Americans get it. At 8%, that's 16 million dead. The 16 million dead estimate, it just seems, for the United States, is insane. Like that's just not even in the reality of possibility.
It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think last I saw on the actual death rates, because like you said, a lot of the people may have had it and weren't diagnosed. So the percentages were so high, but it was like, 0.66%. That's still a lot of people. And the 100,000 death projection, I believe, is based on social distancing.
Yes.
Continuing.
That is a social distancing.
The biggest question that, you mentioned, and I think that strategy feels like kind of the inevitable one, is, if you're at risk, you may just have to quarantine indefinitely until this, virus or effective treatments show up. But the rest of us, start to try to, return to some sense of normalcy with masks, with these precautions, and then, see how effective it is. I think that's kind of the big uncertainty still.
And think about that. I mean, as a political hot potato, we're people of science here in the Valley in general, and we kind of think about systems and, deploying a product or a service into a system, into a world. So we're really thinking about this in a very logical fashion. Now imagine you're a politician who's had an election in 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. The only viable strategy is to say, we got to keep everybody at home until there is a solution here. You score no points if, in their minds, if you send people back to work and people die, which people will. If you send people back to work, they're going to die.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I haven't thought I'm definitely no politician. I'm more of a scientist engineer myself. But the idea that, look, there's a lot of people now who are out of work, who are young and not at risk. They are also voters, right? So if you feel like, geez, my grandparents have already passed or whatever else, and I want to get back to work. I mean, that's a vote that may not go in that direction. So I don't know.
That's fascinating too.
These are just really tricky.
Tricky questions. Literally what we're thinking about is what you think about when you launch a product in the world, which is how is it going to be received by people and what is the constituents going to say? Like, so if you have, if you raise prices on Uber Eats or you make Amazon Prime 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, whatever it is, you really like to think these things through. And politicians are, they were caught so flat-footed overall.
Yeah.
They were so flat-footed.
And you can't test. I mean, that's the thing that we all know from seeing these companies in action, right? Like, okay, I'll try all 3 of these on different landing pages and then look at the numbers and the cohort behavior 3 months later and see. Politicians had to make this decision in a sweeping way, overnight for everybody, right? So it's a much blunter instrument when you're dealing with policies, and
this is why I don't understand
like relief bills.
Somebody was like, "Hey, how would you answer this question?" Because I was a big Bloomberg fan for president, and we were just talking about healthcare or whatever. And I said, the way I would answer the healthcare question is, I'm not sure what's going to work in America. We can see what works in other countries in terms of how they design their healthcare system. So I think we'll have 3 states do some version of, universal healthcare. We'll have those states vote if they want to do it. Yeah. And the states that vote, they want to have a universal healthcare system and pay this amount of tax for it. We'll let them vote and we'll let them execute it for 5 years. And we'll publish all the results and we'll have up to 3 people do it. We'll have the government match and we'll see it. They'll take it out of their state taxes. Everybody pays another, whatever, $700 or $1,500 a year in tax. They raise their taxes and they do it and the government supports it. And we'll have this nationwide conversation. No politician seems to want to say, I don't know what's going to work in America.
Right.
But let's run some tests.
It would be very interesting if somebody had really tried that and embraced it, because that's the right answer, right?
It's literally the right answer. Test.
You can't anticipate all of the complexities of a system of this order of magnitude like human behavior, so you have to test it.
I would test this. I would test this one, which is what I'd say is in San Francisco, we're going to run, in the Bay Area, we're going to run a test. And we're going to ask people under the age of 40 for companies that want to opt into this, and we want them to report people going to work who are age 40, and we want them all to agree to, as part of going to work, they're going to take their temperature every day. You're going to submit your temperature through this app, and you're all going to go for weekly testing, and we're going to try to get 100,000 people in the test or so, and we're going to publish the results and see if anybody gets it, and they're going to tell us how they got to work and their commute. Did they take BART? Did they take the bus? Did they walk? Did they bike? Did they take an Uber? Or a Lyft, and let's go from there. That would be an amazing. The beauty of that
is you don't actually have to ask anybody for anything. I mean, the technology's there. I'm wearing an Oura Ring.
Yeah. Oh, right.
And my phone knows where I am, so I have like heartbeat data and temperature data and location data essentially 24/7.
You have temperature data from the Ring?
The Ring, yeah.
The Ring gives you temperature data? I didn't know that. Aura was at our launch festival, I don't know, 5 years ago. And I was like, I just don't want to do any more hardware startups. It's just too brutal. And the guy was like, no, I think it's going to be like, this is going to cost nothing eventually. And it's really the software. And I was like, I just can't take on any more hardware risk at this point. It's too hard.
It's expensive experiments.
Very expensive.
Hey, if I could ask one question of you.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I think our firm has always aspired to do and has never properly executed is we do a lot of this high quality thesis work internally and it stays internal.
Yeah.
And I've seen you in action with Angel and otherwise, and just how much high quality content you're able to put into the world in short amount of time. I would love to learn more about how you guys do it.
Well, the blogging was a big revolution, right? And then you had this revolution of podcasting. So I started blogging 2003. I started podcasting 12 years ago. We had Kalakanis Cast and then the first episode of This Week in Startups maybe 11 years ago. So when a new format comes out, you can really experiment and have an interesting time. And so that is a great entry point. Now, there are still tried and true, but right now there's probably 50 podcasts by venture capitalists conservatively. And so, it's a little noisy there. Probably not a great time to start. Blogs, also probably not a great time to start. But here's something that's new. Webinars, right? Like what we're doing right now, Zooms. So here's what I would say. If I was you, I would do a free Zoom, and I would say, I'm going to just talk about these 3 matrices, and we're going to do it as a free Zoom. And you can join the Zoom. Just register here at this Typeform or SurveyMonkey. Go ahead and register, Google form, whatever. And I'm going to let 200 people on, and I'm just going to explain to you in my own words, because you're a plain-spoken, really smart dude. It's like you don't really need to be coached. When you're talking about that which you're an expert, there is no coaching necessary. The reason people have to practice and have to go to training and do all this stuff is because they're trying to talk about shit they don't know. But you know it cold because you created these things. So what I would do is I'd say, hey, listen, we have 10 different criteria we look at, and I'm just going to unveil 3 or 4 of them in 3 podcast series, 3 webinars, and just do 3 webinars and see what happens. It's lightweight. It's an experiment. You got time. You're sitting at home. I sent you the microphone and the headset, and just do what you're doing here and explain 3 concepts in an hour and then take questions. And what you'll see is, now you got 200 emails per webinar. Now you got 600 emails. When you do the 4th or 5th one, you're going to start with 600 emails and say, hey, I'm doing a new one. And keep it short. Short is better than nothing. So people get too precious. Yeah. I've never been precious about like the things I do. I'm just like, I'm going to pop it up and do it. Right. And here we go. And that was the start of this podcast was just, nice. We had 1 camera. If you look at the first episodes, we had 1 or 2 cameras, I think, maybe even 1 for some of the first ones, where I just turned the camera on and put a microphone literally on the desk in between the 2 people with no microphones when we did Kalanick's cast. So don't be precious and just try something and then see. But I think talking about that which we know really well is the way to do it. Yeah. That's my best advice. And the problem is, I like that. I think for people who are very considerate and smart, they always think there's somebody who is a smart person who is very considered will say, there's somebody who knows more than me. I don't need to be the one doing this. And then somebody who's a neophyte like me says, well, why not me, right? And I'll give it a shot. And so what I find sometimes is my smartest friends don't do it because they're like, there's got to be somebody better. Like imagine a Bill Gurley podcast. Like you and I would be like, when is the next? We'd be sitting there like we'd be online 15 minutes before the podcast, and we'd pay $100 per issue. We pay what would you pay per episode for the Bill Gurley or Michael Moritz podcast or Doug Leone podcast? We pay $100 an episode.
Yeah, gold.
We would literally be waiting like we would be like the people who show up half an hour before the Warriors game to watch the shoot around. We'd be like, yeah, we want, just in case he goes on microphone early, I want to be here for it. I want to just soak it in. So. Don't be too precious about it and look at it as, instead of you looking at it as like I'm producing a book or a podcast, look at it as you're hosting a conversation.
Mm-hmm. How many minutes? You mentioned it has to be short.
Short is better than nothing. That's what I tell people who are founders who are sending us monthly updates. Short is better than nothing. And so I'm literally tell my founders, send me back these 5 numbers. Number of customers this month, number of customers, and send me these 5 cohorts. Number of customers this month versus last month. Revenue this month versus last month, spend this month versus last month, headcount this month versus last month, maybe traffic this month. There might be some other metric. And just send me those 5 metrics and don't write any copy, and then I'll hit reply. And, they're like, I don't have time to write an update. It took me 5 hours to write the last one. I'm like, too precious. Give me these 5 numbers and I'll hit reply and we'll have a conversation. And it frees them, right? They're like, I can get those 5 numbers. I have them right here. I'm like, great. Email those. Cash in bank. How about that?
So webinar ideal length, is it 20 minutes, 15, 10?
I think 20 minutes to 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes for you to present, and then take questions for as long as they're interesting. And always leave people wanting more.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, good. Thank you.
All right, there you go, Shawn. You got your marching orders, and thanks for coming on the pod. I know everybody's very busy, very stressed out right now, and one of the ways you can deal with that low-lying dread, that existential concern you have, I think, is to do work, is to feel of service and have purpose. And, that's what we're doing here on this podcast, you and I talking and giving this advice and sharing what we've learned for that next generation of investors and or founders who maybe get something from this. I just encourage everybody out there listening, do the work. And if you do the work and you're busy and you get a little exercise, you go for that hike, you get that sunlight, eat healthy, spend time with your family, enjoy that, but work. Do some work. you'll feel better.
Yeah.
Move the ball forward.
I might add to serve as well.
Yes. Be of service.
My wife, Jennifer, who is also a venture capitalist, founder of Reach Capital, got a nice family system going where, there's a list of little service things, talking about writing, getting started small, just, calling a grandparent, dropping off something for the neighbors, preparing a care package for somebody who, is alone, or, somebody in the family who's in the healthcare industry. So I think, doing our best to try and, help out in what feels like small ways relative to being on the front lines, but some way to be appreciated.
Small is big. Small is the new big. Give tips. That's my other thing. Like, listen, if you got people dropping food off and the service doesn't allow you to put tipping, just get that $10, $5, $20 bill and just tape it to your front door, or, put it in an envelope and just put Uber driver or Uber Eats driver or Instacart or sometimes they say they're not allowed to give a tip and say, you know what, just buy everybody lunch at the office. And I'm not taking it back. If you can drop it on the floor and somebody else can pick it up, or you can take it back to the office. That's what I tell people when they say we don't take tips. I just throw it right in their hand.
I like that.
And I say, great, you can throw it on the ground. Somebody else can pick it up, but I'm not taking it back.
I like that.
That's my style from Brooklyn. Everybody gets tips. Give tips, everybody. Big, huge tips to your frontline workers. Huge tips.
Amen.
If you are listening to this podcast and you got a job, you can afford, if you're getting a $25 hamburger, to give a $5, $10, or even $25. Be 100% tipper if you can. Okay. All right, Shawn. Thanks for doing it. Everybody follow Shawn VC on the Twitter. I don't know if he tweets, but you can follow him. All right. Look forward to your webinar. Stay safe, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.